It's been 1 week since the election that shook up the Conservative Party, and this week the party will chart its path forward. The Conservative Caucus will meet on Parliament Hill tomorrow. They have to decide who will lead the party in the House of Commons. Since Pierre Poilievre lost his seat, he cannot be the leader of the official opposition right now, but he's working to fix that.
Well, it's been about a week since the election, and it didn't go how we wanted. But when you get knocked down, you get up and get going. Now, it wasn't enough. We didn't get over the finish line, which means that I need to learn and grow, and our team needs to expand. That will be my mission. And we've got a path. With a path to get elected back into Parliament as soon as possible, we'll be holding the government to account.
Poilievre has been out in the riding. He hopes will send him back to Ottawa. On social media, he wrote, "It will be an honour to work for their support to return to Parliament, hold the government to account, and champion common sense values for Canada." Well, let's talk about it all with the Power Panel. They're back. Rachel Siegel, Brad Levine, Vandana Qatar, and Rob Russo. Rachel, I'm going to start with you and something we heard from Pierre Poilievre there, learn and grow. I think it's interesting to see these two sort of currents that are happening in the Conservative Party right now. I will tell you, talking to folks Saturday and Sunday before the vote, it felt like there would be a real move to push Poilievre out. That's getting quieter. It's not so obvious to me that there will be internal change, and yet Mr. Poilievre is talking about learning and growing. And I guess I wonder how much you think the Conservative Party needs to change as a result of what happened a week ago.
Well, I think that one of the things that Pierre talked about in that video that we just saw was the fact that 2.3 million more Canadians voted Conservative, and 25 new seats in this country went Conservative. And he even touched upon the ability of the Conservative Party in this race to pick up young people in this country. And I don't think the mission has changed, and he talked about that in the video as well. I think that there is a lot of internal support for Pierre Poilievre. In my circles, Catherine, there is a lot of support for Pierre Poilievre. I think having that stability and leadership and giving him the credit that he deserves in bringing together the Conservative Party across provinces, building that support in Canada, I think is what we will see come out of tomorrow. Obviously, this is the first time that the Conservative Caucus will meet. But what I think will come out of that is the fact that the caucus is united around Pierre Poilievre, who obviously is going to be running in Alberta and will hopefully be back in the House of Commons after this session if Mark Carney sticks to his word and calls the by-election. And so I think there are a lot of Conservatives that are excited about the path forward for the party. And
so Rachel, I'm going to get in here because you keep talking about Pierre Poilievre, and I do want to ask you, does that extend to Jenny Byrne? Because Pierre Poilievre's campaign manager was called out, if not by name, nonetheless clearly by two Conservative premiers. The two of them work very closely together. Do you believe that she can stay in her role after caucus meets behind closed doors tomorrow?
I've worked for a lot of parties, Catherine, and run a lot of campaigns. And after any campaign, there is a big look at what happened during the last election. Obviously, we would have liked to have won government, and we didn't. And so I think any party would then review the campaign manager and the campaign team and what worked and what didn't. Whether or not Jenny specifically will stay on is a decision of the party and not one that I can personally speculate on. But I will say that, like, when we look at the results of this campaign, the swell of support for Conservatives, the best support they've seen in any race in Canadian history happened in this last race.
Okay, Brad, we are going to get to the NDP in a moment, but right now, given that your party is doing its own soul searching, I wonder what you think of the process the Conservative Party is going through right now, and what Rachel said there about how far change does or doesn't extend.
Yeah, no, I found the video, I found it a refreshing contrition from Mr. Poilievre there. That was, I think, out of step with what many Canadians know and perhaps dislike about him. But I think he's showing that he, took on some of the responsibility and is offering a path forward. Clearly a message that he wants to stay on as leader. The Conservative Party has recent history where if a leader is unsuccessful, they go after him. And of course, some of the senior staff that you're talking about were responsible for the last guy who was shown the door. So clearly this is a play to stay on. I think though, that it's right that the caucus is behind him. I don't hear any movement against him. The by-election will be held quickly because ultimately Carney needs Poilievre. The two of them, or at least Mr. Carney, isn't as successful and could not put the coalition together that he did last Monday without the existence of Pierre Poilievre. So he needs him. So it was not a surprise when he says that I will call a by-election for Poilievre quickly, because Mr. Carney needs him to constantly remind Canadians that, you know, when things go bad for Mr. Carney, that could be your alternative. And that, you know, the Democrats will have to work with that over the coming months. But not surprised at all. But I don't think Poilievre's going anywhere in the near term.
Vandana, Pierre Poilievre and Mark Carney, frenemies? They need each other? What do you think?
Listen, Pierre Poilievre had a year ahead to, make his case to Canadians, and Mark Carney was able to blow that within a few weeks, right? And I mean, as well as, Pierre Poilievre did do well in the campaign, he still, with all the time he had, the lead time he had, wasn't able to make government. But I do think he has made that active contrition. He's trying to fight for his seat and be the leader there, but we'll have to see, can he stick to it?
I'm going to say there was some, forgive me, bravado there, I think, Vonda, in the answer. And I have heard folks say perhaps if the Conservatives had had another week, they could have made bigger breakthroughs in Ontario. Is it really as simple as saying Mark Carney blew it all up in just a few weeks' time?
No, but I think he was able to speak to where Canadians are and also showcase what he's looking for.
I wonder specifically on the question of giving Pierre Poilievre a by-election essentially as soon as possible. I think, the initial reaction to that seemed to be in large part, hey, this is great, here's a guy who doesn't want to play politics. But something I hear from Conservatives is perhaps the fact that Pierre Poilievre is back so quickly also makes them more willing to sort of dance with the one that brung you. Do you think that there is a world where Mr. Carney comes to regret the willingness to bring Mr. Pierre Poilievre back to the House as quickly as possible?
I don't think so. I think, as I've gotten to know him the last few weeks, I think he's very decisive. I think you'll see that in how he leads as a Prime Minister. And I think he will make decisions quickly. And I don't think he'll look back on that.
Okay. Rob, what do you think the Conservatives need to do right now?
Well, I think that based on what I've heard, they're going to ask some pointed questions in their caucus meeting. I think that they do need to ask some pointed questions. That's the first time I've heard Mr. Poilievre say that he needed to learn and grow. I think that those are the kinds of things they want to ask some more about. What did you learn? How are you going to grow? Because up until now, in his discussions with MPs and senators, he said, but for Mr. Trump, but for the shiny CV of Mark Carney, but for Mr. Trudeau leaving, but for the swan dive of the NDP, but for the fainting and getting of the vapors of the Bloc Québécois, we would have won. And that doesn't really explain how you blow a 25-point lead. They want to remind him of what happened the last time a Conservative leader lost and allowed a Liberal government to go into a fourth mandate. That was Stephen Harper. He was the last Conservative leader who got to stay. He changed his chief of staff. He changed his campaign manager. He changed his pollster. He changed his comms team. So it wasn't just the leader who learned, but the team changed in order to deal with new circumstances. They're going to ask questions like that, and they're going to ask specific questions, and they're going to want to know who is going to lead them. They don't want somebody who is going to remind people of the bile that they've been choking on, the toxic bile that they've been choking on, from all sides, really. And so they're going to want somebody who is going to represent perhaps the future of the Conservative Party as the next spokesperson inside the House of Commons.
Okay, that's Rachel. I just want to give you a quick second to weigh in on all of this, the kind of change that Rob is talking about. Do you think that is on the table for the Conservative Party right now?
I think the Conservative caucus will be having a post-mortem on what happened during this campaign, what they were seeing at the doorsteps, what could have been better. So yeah, I think tomorrow will be a really important day for the Conservative caucus. But again, I do think we will see them coming out with support for Pierre Poilievre to continue on as leader.
But I didn't hear an answer there about change, Rachel.
Whether or not we need change.
Whether or not no, not in leadership, but Rob's talking about the team around the leader and finding ways to demonstrate growth. Do you think that that's something that's on the table right now?
I think it's on the table as much as the entire campaign and what happened and the post-mortem of what we can do better to ensure that we win government and get Canadians to support us in even larger numbers than we're already seeing.
Okay. We said we would talk about the NDP, and we're going to now because, of course, after a crushing election loss, the federal New Democrats are meeting tonight to plan for their return to Parliament. The NDP's federal council will select an interim leader in consultation with these 7 MPs, all that remain of the NDP's caucus. After losing his seat, Jagmeet Singh announced that he would step down as soon as that interim leader was chosen. Brad, what are you expecting in terms of where the party goes with this interim leader, which would send some signals, I think, about how they're going to manage during this time? Like, does it need to be a member of caucus, for instance? What should they be looking for?
Yeah, well, it should be somebody to lead the party at this stage should be in caucus, because that's where the most immediate work needs to be done. So, you know, you take a look at among the 7, and the federal council will deliberate on that and who wants to do that. I think the work cut out for them. One is to pursue the idea of whether or not the Board of Internal Economy can extend party status. You have to try, you have to fight for it. Within a minority context and all that's going on, it only makes abundant sense for the NDP to be extended. That has been done in provinces where the threshold is moved around depending on what voters say. So I think that's first and foremost. So good negotiation. What role does the caucus play working with the House Leader, the government House Leader in particular, on things like, you know, committees, on getting the work done? Because let's not forget that the last Parliament, minority, even though we had a confidence supply agreement, the Conservatives gummed up the works, and not a heck of a lot got done over the last number of months because Conservatives stonewalled things at committee. Committees need to function. If we're going to have a Team Canada prospect here and working on the Trump tariff threats and on all the things that we've talked about that are facing the country, economic headwinds, the whole bit, interprovincial trade, what have you, we need functioning Parliament, and we can't tolerate what the Conservatives did last round. For that to happen, the Liberal working minority needs those New Democrats. So somebody who can lead caucus into those conversations with the House Leader and the leadership of the Liberal Party in the House of Commons, I think would suit the party and Parliament very, very well.
Okay, so your case, if I understand it, is, you know, put me in, Coach. We could help the Liberals out. Vandana, do you think that's something that the Liberals would be inclined to do?
I think you heard Mr. Carney's answer.
Well, he said no. He said no deal, but
no
that's
deal.
different than giving them recognized party status.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I haven't actually heard any conversations around that. I think it would depend on it. But I do feel bad for the NDP. In fact, like, you know, you have no party status, you don't have any money, and you don't have an heir apparent. I do think from that opportunity can come and redefine what they mean to people. Are they going to be the conscience of the Parliament? Are they going to be downtown Liberals? Or, I mean, progressives? Are they going to be rural Canada and working people? But I think they'll have to figure out who they're speaking to and what that message is. But for the Liberals, I don't know. But I think, you know, we'll have to see how that goes.
I do want to ask you about that because, of course, your party's just been through a leadership race, and you know, we've seen the sort of various iterations of how the Liberal Party has dealt with this question in years previous. Do you think parties really soul search and then say, okay, we're going to be the conscience, or we're going to be the party of the downtown progressives? Or is it just that the right person comes along and the people in the party go, that looks like a winning horse, that this direction feels right, and they attach themselves to an individual rather than these sort of, you know, rending of clothing about what they want to be?
So I think it depends. So I think when Justin Trudeau ran for leadership, I would say I was part of conversations where we defined ourselves and wonder, what does the Liberal Party stand for? You know, what do we mean to people? What happened? Who are we speaking to? And went through that post-mortem of conversations. I think that was really real. I think with Mark Carney, you know, we're hitching on to him and making sure we're riding.
But you don't think that was true with Justin Trudeau, who had this, you know, nice hair, though, well-known name, all of that?
I don't think so. I mean, I would say I came in, you know, early on, and part of the conversations is what will be, and Justin Trudeau was part of those conversations. Mm-hmm. You know, he had certain views and leans that he wanted to, you know, propose, but he really, it was a conversation with a number of Liberals as to what do we stand for, what do we mean, and that's where things like the idea of the Senate came forward, right? Like, how are we going to operate? So I do think those were real, but I think it depends on the party. I think for the NDP, it would present an opportunity to do that.
Rob, what do you think?
I think that they have some very basic and important work to be done. There's 100 people who are going to be laid off at NDP headquarters. Mm-hmm. That's a very difficult thing for them. So they have to have a lifeboat strategy. How are they going to pool the resources they have to most effectively present an image of the NDP that they want to present. In the interim, the National Council and those who are left have to decide on the process to discuss exactly where the NDP is going, as Brad said. Mm-hmm. Do they want to be a party of conscience, mm-hmm. or do they want to someday put themselves in a position to wield power? That's a long discussion. In the interim, though, they're going to have to try to figure out how to survive and how to petition Mr. Carney to give them party status. In many instances, I think it would behoove the Liberal Party to do this. I think it's good for the democracy. I think that there are, how many NDP premiers right now? Mm-hmm. At least two, including one of the most popular premiers in the country. So I think given the role that the NDP has played in Canada's history, it would behoove the Liberals to give them party status.
Rachel, what about the Conservatives in relation to that? If such a decision were to be made, do you think Conservatives would be wise to say, okay, the more the merrier, or do we immediately start banging the drum that takes us back to the last Parliament of NDP Liberal coalition?
Well, I think that's going to be up to the interim leader that's elected tomorrow amongst Caucus. But I think that the NDP is at such an interesting point right now, and that lifeboat strategy, I'll totally echo that, because for me, as somebody in British Columbia, which is typically an NDP stronghold, this is a very interesting question as to how they maneuver to keep going, because anecdotally, I've been hearing on the ground here that there are a lot of people who had typically voted NDP and went over to vote for Mark Carney in this race, but have Mark Carney on a very short leash and are waiting to see how that goes before potentially, again, voting for the NDP in the next campaign if they don't like where the Liberals are going. And so I think the NDP are really on shaky ground right now, but ground that if played well, they could pick up a lot of support in the next campaign. And then, of course, tying that to the Conservative fortunes, we have seen that when that NDP support goes down, we pull support from the Conservatives. And so I think the Conservatives are watching the NDP very closely. We're hoping that they really do rally and that they continue to operate on the left in this country. And we're watching closely who will come out of that meeting and be the interim leader. My money's on probably a British Columbia MP, maybe John Davies, who was within a couple of hundred votes in a very safe seat. And so I think that what they decide to do next and asking for official party status will be critical in their long-term success in this system.
Okay, Brad, we've got a moment left. I want to ask you to weigh on this question of whether or not the NDP has to decide if it just wants to be the conscience of Parliament. Do you think that is a question the party needs to wrestle with?
Well, it's a question that within the context of the next full leader, that is, the interim leader will take over for a bit, maybe within the next hopefully 12 to 18 months, the full leader comes in. I think it's a tone that's set by the leader. And the leader can say the words, I'm ready to be prime minister, but not setting out the hard work that comes to actually doing that and building a coalition that is credible and big enough to actually achieve that. We haven't had that since Jack Layton. So it can be done. So it's a question that you don't just mouth the words to. It's a question that you answer not just in rhetoric, but in your actions, how you operate. I mean, it's a question we could ask of the other opposition parties as well. Did Mr. Poilievre really act like he wanted to be the prime minister when he didn't reach out to his brother in Doug Ford or in Tim Houston in Nova Scotia? There's all sorts of things that you can do to illustrate whether or not you're serious for government or not. And I think that that's not just a question that you put to the floor of a convention. It's embodied by the leadership contenders mapping out their path to how we get there. But that goes to the founding of the party back in the early 1960s. That's what the founding leaders wanted us to do, and so it should be asked in action, not just in rhetoric.
Some really interesting questions that both parties are grappling with. Thank you to the Power Panel for weighing in on all of it. That's Rachel Siegel, Brad Levine, Vandana Cutter, and Rob Russo.